I'm in London. We were in New Orleans from probably like around about 2010 through to 2018, and then we started sort of coming back and forth. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, so we were kind of like over here for a couple of years, I should say.
You got stuck in London during the pandemic?
Well, we were actually, we nearly got stuck in New Orleans without any health insurance. I think they'd stopped all outbound flights, and then they reinstated them, like one last go, as it were. So we were able to get kind of like the last plane out of Dodge.
So it really came down to the healthcare system in the UK at the end of the day?
Well, I mean, like it was that. It was also with the way that it was shaping up. We just felt that London would probably be a better place to be than New Orleans in that kind of situation.
I think you made the right choice.
I think we possibly did, yeah.
And you've just been there ever since?
Well, yeah. I mean, we've been back, but we've been, we're based here now.
What brought you out to the States initially?
It was quite simple, really. We were, it was at at a time when the dollar was relatively weak against sterling. It was during the reunion, so we were touring the States, both on the East and West Coast, all over, really, kind of, I guess, pretty frequently in those days. So we had money coming in, which we were, myself and my wife Louise, we were just kind of frittering it away, like staying on in after tours, staying in, expensive hotels and stuff like that. And it was just getting, we could just see this is just going to continue and we're just going to like blow it all. So, and then, so look, basically Louise said that, we should maybe think about, getting somewhere over here. And we were looking at I guess you could call them the kind of obvious choices for people in bands, the sort of New York, LA kind of, and then we played Voodoo Fest in 2009 down in New Orleans. And I'd been to New Orleans before in the late 80s, but my wife hadn't. And she just really sort of fell hard for the place. It was at the time that David Simon was making Treme, and he gave us a tour of the city. Because when I'd come with the band in the old days, to be honest, I'd never really been outside the French Quarter, and of course there is a lot more to New Orleans.
It's hard when you have to.
Well, if you don't know it, you're kind of like, okay, this is, and and there's this kind of thing about, people say, oh, you don't want to go down there, or you don't want to go there, and it's like, I don't know,
and then all of a sudden you're stuck in like Times Square or whatever, right?
Well, kind of. I mean, like, I think back in the late 80s, New Orleans was. It's a bit like Times Square was in the late 80s, not like it is now, but a lot wilder, a lot wilder. I think kind of bourbon and everything can still get quite sort of sketchy, but not. It's so I don't know. I think it had more sort of more fire in its belly maybe back then. But well, who am I to say? People go there and have a good time. Why should I be down on them just because they like to go to Bourbon Street? It's there for a reason.
Yeah, listen, I stopped drinking about 5 or 6 years ago.
Right, I hear you.
It definitely recontextualizes.
Yeah.
That's what they're drinking.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. I mean, I quit a while back myself, and yes, it's the city generally. New Orleans is quite interesting from that point of view. There's quite a lot of fluid intake. It's very hot. You have to hydrate, I guess.
Alcohol might not be the wisest.
Hurricanes,
who am I?
Hurricanes to go, maybe. Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate that both of your answers for moving to either place are both extremely pragmatic. One has to do with the strength of the dollar, and the other has to do with healthcare.
Well, yeah, I mean that was kind of like the strength of the dollar thing was like, what are we going to do with this money? Let's get somewhere in America. Let's actually go somewhere that maybe other people aren't thinking of going to. It's a funny place, New Orleans. It's one. I mean, if you say to people, "Oh yeah, I'm off to the States. I'm going to like New York or or LA or San Francisco or whatever," and people, "Oh yeah, that's cool." What if you say you're going to New Orleans, if you say you live in New Orleans, people it generally actually does provoke a reaction because it's it's a place people respond to. I remember when Katrina happened, and I really did notice this. There seemed to be like the way that the administrations, the initial response of the sort of government and everything seemed to be really kind of like, oh well, this has happened. They there seemed to be almost a sort of a sense that this city's just going to sink, so maybe we should just just leave it almost. And I know that there was just like sort of around the world, people were like, "What? It's New Orleans." It really, I think it means something to people when we moved there, up where we live. We didn't ever get any tourists up where we live, but a little bit sort of down from us, you'd get these tours coming up from the French Quarter into Tremé, and a lot of them would be French people. They were seemed to be the largest block of, or the largest contingent of foreign tourists.
Well, that makes sense, right? I mean, there's a lot of
the French. Well, there's obviously the French connection, but these were, I think, specifically French jazz fans. I mean, there may have been some, but which is what they were doing up in the Tremé. I mean, like, I'm sure there are some French people who go there because it would be actually very attractive. This used to be ours, and there's an equestrian statue of Joan of Arc outside the French market and everything. But no, I think it was it's a city that's held in a very great esteem around the world, and in the States as well. I think
Well, 2010. I mean, that is not at all far removed from Katrina.
No,
so,
it was still very much a thing that was. I mean, I think something like that is always going to haunt people. I think there's a lot of undiagnosed PTSD in people who had to go through. People went through some really, serious stuff. And, and it's going to leave a mark. The kids, people like who are tiny little, 4 or 5 year old kids. It's going to affect them. Something as dramatic and catastrophic.
There's PTSD, and like, so I moved to New York not long after 9/11, and there's PTSD, but there's also just really, and I'm obviously not saying this to downplay the impact of 9/11, but Katrina it leveled a city for the most part.
Yes,
so like
it really did.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both cataclysmic events, but actually, 9/11. Sorry, Katrina presented. That was an existential crisis for New Orleans. It really was. But when 2010, when we got there, it was still very depopulated, but you could see it was coming back. It wasn't just going to give up quite that easily.
Did you find that people were welcoming?
Extremely. We moved into basically a very quite a poor black neighborhood, and people wanted to know they wanted to know that we were going to paint the house, because they felt it had been like left unpainted for a bit, or the paint hadn't changed, let's put it that way, for quite some time. But we honestly, it was brilliant. It was we actually stepped into a proper community, something that maybe you don't get so much in over here anymore. In a place like London, the old sort of like old communities tend to have been sort of uprooted by history, events, whatever, in New Orleans, we were, is that where we were in the it's kind of, I think, still technically, it depends on who you talk to. I've read in a sort of kind of scholarly publication, I think from Tulane University, that where we are is in the Tremé. Other people say it isn't, because the Tremé actually stops a few blocks below us. Be that as it may, whatever. It was just, it was really the best thing we ever did. And the welcome we got was fantastic. It was really, really cool. Our neighbors were great. They still are. Those are still there. Trying to
figure out the timeline here. So you met David Simon prior to moving to
we first met David around about 2005, something like that. It was, I know it was during I guess it must have been the was it the last season of The Wire? He came to see him and George Pelecanos came to see us in Washington DC, and yeah, we struck up a real friendship with David and his then wife Laura Lippman and George and his wife Emily.
Is that kind of more or less how all of these? I guess I'll use this loosely. It applies to some more than others, but how the acting roles came to be is just sort of like befriending like an Alex Cox or a David Simon.
Well, I mean, Alex Cox was kind of we wanted Alex to shoot the video for A Pair of Brown Eyes because he just I think a few people in the band had seen Repo Man and really liked it and just felt that he was the right guy for the job, and we sort of we hit it off, and then he wanted to he wanted the original idea with Alex was that we were going to all be in the film that ended up becoming Walker, which is the one with Ed Harris about William Walker, the
Western, yeah.
The guy that took over Nicaragua in the 1850s. And that didn't, for whatever reasons, budgeting or funding or whatever, didn't quite work out. I think the idea was that we were going to film it in Mexico. But that didn't happen, and we ended up doing Straight to Hell, which is Walker isn't the Western. Walker's set in the same kind of time period, I guess. But it's, we did the pastiche spaghetti Western Straight to Hell in Almeria in Spain, which was, and so that just came sort of really, but the David Simon was definitely, I heard that he was doing that he was shooting a thing in New Orleans, and I said, could I get a part in that? And he said, yeah, why not?
It strikes me that kind of maybe a through line through most or all of your career is just being game for whatever comes along.
Yeah, I think that's fair comment. You do get sort of offered the chance to do things that actually are really, really interesting. It's kind of like what happened really with this. Not quite sure the best way to describe it. Reincarnation isn't exactly, let's say reincarnation for want of a better word, until a better one comes along, of the Pogues, a reiteration, which was, it came in just a very sort of, it was Tom Cole, the drummer out of Fontaines, DC, and his friend Campbell, got in touch with me. And they were just putting on a weekend of Irish music at a little folk club in East London, and they said, "Look, it's we know it's this is last year, last February or something," and they said, "We know it's 40 years since the release of Red Roses for Me. So would you like to, on the Friday night, would you like to maybe curate an evening around Red Roses for Me? And we've got these musicians coming, you can use some of them." And it was like, okay, this could be quite interesting. Not really thinking about doing anything sort of with any of the other Pogues, or it was something there was just going to be something very kind of low level. And then we announced it on Twitter, and it just that this was going to be happening on the Friday. This weekend was happening, and on the Friday night this was going to happen, this Red Roses thing, and the Friday just sold out like in minutes with this huge waiting list. So we ended up, we moved it across to an old, this actually beautifully restored music hall, what you'd call a vaudeville theatre, actually quite near where the folk club was. So we had the after show there, so they didn't lose the bar takings, or at least not all of the bar takings. And yeah, it was just that sort of thing, that something that was really going to be something just like small, low key, just turned into this really something quite extraordinary. The show that we did at Hackney, it was so good. It just like, it was actually one of the most amazing things I've ever been a part of, if I'm honest with you, because the way that the audience reacted, and this has been a feature of what we've done subsequently, it kind of wasn't like it was during the reunions. It was kind of more like it was back in the sort of mid or late 80s. It was a real, like, and also the the sort of demographic of the crowd. Sure, there were a lot of people who were obviously like, old time fans of the band, but there were also a lot of people who clearly would have been like, weren't even born, when we were starting. So, which is always nice, Um, yeah. So yeah, grabbing the opportunities and running with them, I guess. I knew at Hackney that this would, when that evening happened, and it was just right from the off, you could see, this is brilliant. This is going to be great. And I knew then, okay, well, we're going to have to take this to Ireland. We can't not take it to Ireland. And then I'm also very much aware this is only the first album. We've got Rum Sodomy the Lash is, of course, 40 this year. And I could just see, all right, this is something that will probably, whether we want to or not, we're probably whether it's gonna carry on for a little while yet. I'm all for it. It's been so good.
I mean, if you didn't want it to happen, it wouldn't have.
Well,
happen.
Of course.
It's clear to me. Yeah. I mean, and this is going to sound kind of hacky to say, but it's clear to me watching you that you're having fun doing it.
It's got I'm having an extraordinary amount of fun, and it's got there's real power and heft to it. It's not just like, on one level, it is like getting up on stage and having fun and doing these songs, but we're doing them with people who, I mean, we're doing it with, like, you could say, if there weren't so many, if there's just been such a rich outpouring of the wildest talent imaginable, coming out of Ireland over the last 10 years. So I could hardly say that we've actually got the cream of them, because I mean that there's so many of them. There's so many people we could fit on that stage if we were able to, but the question is, well, who would do what, be a very, very long show, I think. But just with the people that we do have are so, it's just so brilliant. There's moments of real beauty and magic, which that takes it far beyond being any kind of, sort of, Nadine Shah, who's one of our singers, came up to me after Nadine Shah is a really fantastic singer, and is gracious. Collaborator. Yeah. Did an extraordinary version of the Old Triangle in Hackney and Dublin, and it's just, fantastic voice. But she came up to me after Hackney and she said, this kind of thing quite often can just fall flat on its face, and it can be just really no fun at all for anyone involved. And she said, this was just like, when's the next one? I want to keep doing this. It was, people were really lifted by it. I think a lot of the Irish musicians, Dara Lynch, the guitarist from Lancome, who played guitar on the UK tour that we just did, the Rum Sodomy the Lash one, he was saying, I've been a fan of the Pogues since I was 7 years old. I've been playing these songs since I was 7 years old, but I actually didn't realize how complicated they could be, because we've got all these weird little chord changes where chords happening where they shouldn't really be, but stuff like that. Anyway, it's just it's been exhilarating. It's been exhilarating watching. You've got basically these people who are sort of like super fans of the band, but at the same time, just extraordinary talents in their own right, and they're doing something with Irish music that is just really, it's just fantastic. What some of them are doing. It's just really, it's this whole, they've really gotten into the meat and the bones of it, and just, I could go on. I'll descend into cliche. I can feel it. I can feel it happening. But honestly, people should come and catch these shows because they're fucking great.
There's something about your music, and maybe it's to a larger extent like Celtic music or Irish music, that it's sing-along music, and for that reason it lends itself really well to this celebratory atmosphere that you're putting on.
It's single.
Like it's sing along. It's
Sing along. I beg your pardon.
It's like very, it's communal.
There's that aspect to it, but it's and certainly with us, and I mean, obviously, a lot of the songs are really sort of like rowdy, kind of celebratory. There's some of them, of course, that are not in the least bit rowdy or celebratory, but yet people still just get totally sort of absorbed and just drawn into the sheer horror of some of them, and they're just we have John Francis Flynn. I don't know if you're aware of him. He's another one of this Irish new guard. Really he's about 6'5". He's got a very deep voice. Fantastic singer and musician. Plays either on his own or he also has a full band, and his full band are just great. He's got a few albums out, or maybe 2 or 3 albums. Jeez, can't remember. But anyway, John, amongst the songs that John does, he does the band played Waltzing Matilda, and he invests it with such gravitas and pathos isn't the word at all that I'm looking for here. It's such a beautiful reading of a song that is so sort of relentless and harrowing, and is such a brilliant depiction of the horror and pointlessness of war. The guy that wrote it, Eric Bogle, he also wrote the Green Fields of France, which is, a
bit of a downer, yeah.
yeah. His poor wife.
In describing in contrasting this new set of shows, you said that one of the musicians compared it to, I guess, reunion shows that were no fun at all. Is that how you would, to a certain extent, describe the last go of reunion shows prior to?
No. Nadine was just saying that sometimes.
I know. I'm just saying, like, was there a time when the band got together when you felt like you were just kind of going through the motions?
I don't think so ever, really. I think we, I don't think any of us, I don't think it's possible to play these songs and just kind of like do them. There might have been times possibly when we were like, when we released If I Should Fall From Grace with God, we did an inordinate number of shows in the space of one calendar year. I think we did, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it was around about 250 shows or something like that. And I think there you can find yourself in a situation where you can't help but go through the motions because you've got very little left to give. You're just simply exhausted. I think that did kind of burn Shane out, if I'm honest. Shane never particularly enjoyed touring really that much anyway, and so to be doing for such a long time and in such a relentless manner, it's no good for anyone, and of course in those days there was much less awareness about things like people's mental health or whatever, or anything like that. Just simply like, this could be too much, just let everyone just sit down and take a breather at least, and just chill. But that's never an option. You've got record companies wanting, you got to go promote the record. You've got, all this kind of stuff. We had so many people on the payroll that we had to keep sort of touring to pay their wages and everything. But the reunion shows, I mean, they were really liberating because all that was gone. We weren't at the beck and call of a record label. We weren't having to promote anything. All we had to do was get up there and play the songs. And I think, when certainly I can, for myself, when it was Jem Finer phoned me up sometime in 2001 and said, how do you feel about, a Pogues reunion? And I think it had taken me a few years to really come to terms with the fact that it was over. We kind of officially split in 96. And I just about kind of thought, I kind of put it to bed. Thought, all right, that's that. That's over now. And then just as soon as I thought I was out, they brought me back in. And but it was brilliant. It was brilliant. I'd actually at that point I'd not long before quit drinking. So that first tour, I think, looking back now, I realized I was kind of pretty raw. I'd always had this crutch to lean on, in terms of like confidence and whatever. So that actually, from that point of view, just as a sort of sideline, proved also quite valuable because I think one of the things, when you've quit drinking, when you've kind of like come to depend on it, that you have to learn to get by without it, and of course, there's all sorts of ways that you can do that. One of those, I think, is when you're if you're in the position of someone, say like myself, in a band or whatever, to actually be able to get up and play shows and without having to reach for a drink, just to sort of like give you that a little bit, even just a bit of Dutch courage to go on stage, and I kind of like knew, well, I can't do that because I just, no matter what I might say to myself, the possibility of sort of like of it all going wrong, and me just kind of like, oh well, one shot, that was fine. I'll have another. You know the story. So that was basically what I'm trying to say. Is that wasn't an option, and it wasn't even really, apart from the sort of the rawness. It was like, okay, well, you got to get up and do this. So the kind of the rawness and all that kind of thing. That was there, but then you get this surge of adrenaline, and it's and then you do it a few times and you're like, what the hell was I always worrying about? The fact of the matter is you play better when you're sober. It's it's as simple as that, no matter what anyone says.
I was listening to an interview that you were doing, and you're describing I guess part of the reason why you didn't sing early on, and it really just sort of came down to this thing that a lot of us do when we have nerves and we can't really put our full selves into it, and maybe sort of like strain ourselves, and that really, like, I haven't just heard it described in that way, but that makes a lot of sense. And I think that the thing that you said that really spoke to me is that probably a lot of people can sing, they just don't know it because they can't liberate themselves in that way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I really believe that. I think a lot of people can sing, and there's a lot of people out there who've got great voices that we'll never hear because they don't know that they've got them. But there are some people I know who are sadly like tone deaf, so for them it might be a bit of a challenge. But really, anyone can sing. I think, and most people anyway.
You have no issue though, like letting other people take the spotlight as needed.
Oh, not at all. I mean, I'm for myself, I'm far more relaxed and comfortable now about singing anyway. I wouldn't want to be like handling all the vocals in this, because I think it would just look, I would feel intensely uncomfortable about it. Actually, it's like, I much prefer this setup when we've got all these other really brilliant people. And the simple fact of the matter is that no matter how relaxed I may feel, I'm not going to be able to sing Rainy Night in Soho the way that Lisa O'Neill does, or sing The Old Triangle the way that Nadine Shah does, or, the list goes on, They're all brilliant. They're all like, it's just like, I don't know, it's like going on tour with, what shall I say? The 1970 Brazil World Cup team. Yeah, there you go.
you get to be the water boy. Yeah.
Yeah, really, yeah. Orange segment, Miss O'Neill.
I've always been curious, and it, it strikes me as we're talking now. So that, there was that I guess I would say transitional period. Obviously you bring Joe onto the band. Was that at a point when you still felt like you didn't have the confidence to be out front? Is that how he ended up joining?
It was more we kind of like thought, what are we going to do now? How about asking Joe if he wants to be the singer? Because we knew he was kind of like not
he was a
really
free
doing
agent.
anything. He was a free agent and was, I think, maybe at a bit of a loose end, and so I mean, that was brilliant. That really worked to our advantage. I don't mean to sound so cynical about it, but it was just fucking great. It was great to be able to walk out on stage, not having told people that we had Joe Strummer with us. This happened twice, of course, because we'd done it previously with him in '87. Phil Chevron was too ill to go on tour, and so Joe stepped in as on guitar, and like people would be watching us as we were coming on the stage. Like, that's not Philip. Who's this guy?
Looks familiar.
Yeah. Honestly, it was like that. Then you would sort of see you could kind of hear the jaws dropping.
Yeah.
Is that Elvis? Yeah. Yeah, I think it's Elvis. Or is it, yeah, Chuck Berry? Oh, I'm not sure. Fuck me, it's Hendrix. Yeah, no, it was great. It was great. But I that sort of time around, no, I never really sort of got to grips with, well, I was kind of getting there, but I think as far as singing is concerned, it's just something I think at some point over the last, maybe, I don't know, however many years ago, I just kind of like said to myself, stop being such a wanker about it, just sing. You can do it. And because I could, I could sort of feel it in myself. And I realized that that's like, okay, yeah, you could say, well, a lot of people probably think they can sing, but I'll go back and I'll say, well, a lot of those people are probably right. I'm not saying I'm the best singer in the world, or anything like that at all, but I can certainly, I can do what's required of me, as particularly with these types of songs, because they lend themselves to being sung. They lend themselves to, putting something, they all demand that you put something of yourself into them, because they do tell stories, and they're a lot of the time they're very they're really quite they're quite powerful stories. They're very emotional and very, all sorts of things are going on, all kinds of.
It's interesting because obviously coming as punk was coming up, and that being a very liberating ethos, as far as, again, now a cliche, but starting a band and not knowing how to play instruments, you taught yourself to play the whistle, but there's something about singing that is just so much more intimate and naked that it really does freak a lot of people out.
I think so. I think so. And it's yet something that when you do it and you've realized that you've sung a song and people have responded to it the way that you'd kind of like them to respond to it, be it on stage or just in a bar, the session in a bar. It's like, I think you've got every reason to feel a little bit proud of yourself, because you've done the thing, And then, of course, Lisa O'Neill gets up and sings "Rainy Night in Soho," and you're like, "Oh, all right, okay." But no, I mean, that's not what it's about, though. That's not, and she would be the first to say that as well. It's not what it's about. It's what it is delivering the song and bringing out the sort of the truth and the beauty and the sadness, or whatever it may be, or the drunkenness and the vomiting.
It's interesting to hear you describe, because things always appear different from the outside, and it really does. If I'm taking a look at your career, it does feel like there are large periods when you were away from this, but when you really do the math, yeah, I mean, you're talking about really just sort of a couple of years in the interim, when you were doing something Pogues or Pogues adjacent, and I appreciate that. There are a lot of people who are in bands who find themselves spending the rest of their careers running away from it, but that was never you.
No, never. I've always loved this band. I've always loved what we do. I've always, there's always been a part of me that sort of, certainly in the old days, that thought we were the best band in the world. I think that's,
tell that to Joe Strummer.
I think that's something that, you have to be. Oh, you have to. Yeah, no, I think you have to be able to sort of say that, even if it's just to yourself, just late in the dead of night, when wee small hours, you can say to yourself, yeah, we're the best band in the world. There's no need to tell anyone else, but we are. Because if you don't believe that, what are you doing? I mean, it's not about being, you know what I mean? It's not really, that's giving slightly the wrong impression. It's not about being the best, but it's about actually, because it's music, it's about something that's kind of been so central in, in my life and in, I mean, you when you're in a band on tour, that's the whole sort of environment that you're in, and that's the sort of environment that the audience are in. So it all becomes this thing, and to know that when you're up there on that stage, and there can be points in the night where it's just like, I mean, what I'm saying may sound like I'm being incredibly big-headed or anything, but I'm really, really not. I'm basing it more sort of on other people's reactions to the band and the feeling I've had on stage from feeling their reactions. And I'm thinking like particularly of like really playing in front of when we play in places like the Barrowlands in Glasgow. Glasgow audiences have long had a reputation for being like the best crowd in the world, deservedly so, because I think they are. And this is something that is an opinion that is widely shared. So this is not just one of my things. And because it's a very specific thing, the Pogues in Glasgow, because obviously with the Pogues and the sort of whole Irish thing, Glasgow, as you may or may not know, is a city that is absolutely crazy about football, but is also a city that is has a marked sectarian divide. It's kind of not dissimilar to the north of Ireland, except you've never had the same, there were the same levels of violence, obviously, but certainly that mutual sort of like antagonism is there, and it's kind of personified by the two biggest football clubs in Glasgow, who are Glasgow Rangers, who are the Protestants, and Glasgow Celtic, who are a club that were founded by Irish emigres, Roman Catholic Irish emigres.
So it really is right down the Catholic.
Yeah, absolutely, completely. The Rangers fans are, they're self-professed loyalists. They're very much in support the Union, the royal family, all this kind of thing. Whereas essentially the Celtic fans are all sort of like for a united Ireland, and they're very conscious of their Irish heritage and how this relates to the whole sort of the whole history, the whole situation. And so for Pogues crowd in Glasgow, who are, it's like being behind. It's like being behind the goal at a Celtic game when they're playing Rangers, and they just kind of keep scoring. They just keep scoring, and it's just this level of bliss, of like, you've got 2,500 people in a state of absolute ecstasy. There's no testosterone bullshit. It's not about violence or anything like that. It's simply about howling with glee, about yourselves and the night that you're having. And there's just this kind of thing that comes back at you when you're on the stage, and it's just undeniable, because okay, we can produce this effect on these people. Come on.
Something I was thinking about as you were talking about, believing that you're the best band in the world, maybe, a little bit of hyperbole in the middle of the night, but is that it is the, you can get the 5 best musicians in the world together. That doesn't mean there's going to be chemistry.
No, absolutely not.
Like, there's a magic that comes with that particular group of people, and the different things they all brought to the table.
Yes, absolutely. There was an alchemy, between the members of the Pogues that really did create this kind of magic. And I think, we did, um, I know that because people tell me. But I mean, again, it's like I can sit here and say, yeah, sometimes I tell myself in the middle of the night we're the best band in the world, um, but it was just the way the whole thing just gelled so perfectly, and I think that's one of the crucial things. Again, to have that, if you like, to have a sort of platform from which you can say, yeah, actually, we're the best band in the world. I want to say one thing I'd add to that best band in the world thing is I also believe that there are many best bands in the world, because clearly the Pogues aren't the only band in the world, and there's all these other people in like really good bands, and I'm sure they believe, even if they never ever ever say it to anyone, sometimes at 3:00 in the morning, yeah, we're the best band in the world. Don't tell me Black Francis has never thought the Pixies are the best band in the world.
Probably much to the detriment of other members of the band, but but again, it strikes me, having heard you talk about the formation of the band, and obviously, there were some like dissonant threads that had to come together, different bands, and to form into what ultimately became the Pogues. But it really sounds to me like that alchemy or that magic was really there from like the earliest rehearsals.
Yeah, it was. It was. I mean, it kind of existed. It was that aspect of it was coming together before the band even started. I'd say it's a funny thing looking back on it, because you could sort of, looking back, you can see, well, this was kind of meant to happen. Just the sort of like chancing, Shane and Ollie Watts chancing their arm and blagging a show at Cabaret Futura, and then us having to go and learn a load of Irish rebel songs in order to play this gig. Shane picking up an acoustic guitar around at a friend's house and singing Poor Paddy Works on the Railway at 450 miles an hour, and it's suddenly like, oh yeah, well that's an idea. This whole thing just, you can look back on it and say, well, there's something kind of preordained about this, but of course it just happened, and the way that things do sometimes, the right things fall into the right slots, and it's all there.
Obviously, this is the thing that a lot of people learn the hard way. It's hard to know at the time, but there are certain things, once you extract those initially from the group, like that changes the dynamic, and not necessarily
way. Definitely. I would, I think it's a collective creativity, and I think, like, we clearly when we parted company with Shane in 1990, it's basically like that we clearly suffered as a result of that. But I think the same is also true if you look at what Shane. The two Pogues albums without Shane, I've always felt are kind of the Pogues records in name, but maybe not so much in spirit. I don't know. We wanted to we decided to keep going, and we did keep going. We did those two albums. That it is what it
maybe
is.
If you had called it something different, it might have been perceived differently.
Possibly. But the thing is, though, that the core of what we were about had been like really on those first three Pogues albums, and also like Peace and Love and Hell's Ditch have their moments as well. I think The Snake is an interesting record, because it's that would have been, if Shane hadn't been sacked / left, that would have been the next Pogues record, essentially, because the best songs on The Snake are ones that we'd worked out, or he had worked out with us, we'd worked out. So I would kind of say, in some respects, I'd say The Snake is probably maybe a better record than the two Shameless Pogues albums. Though it hasn't got the Pogues on it. It would be even better if it had been what it was meant to be. But, it's all this kind of stuff. Like, we probably we sacked Shane because he clearly did not want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like he kind of threw himself out of the band without saying it.
He's effectively, that's what he did. He didn't. I think he didn't know how to tell us, because I think he felt he'd be letting everyone down if he actually came to us and said, "Look, guys, I've had it." And so instead, we had this rather long and slow and drawn out. Which is what I said earlier. It would have been so much better if we had actually had someone who could say, "Just take a year off. Just take a year off. Take a break. Reconvene. Doesn't matter. Don't worry about labels or anything like that."
Easily said in hindsight.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It was our decision, and we made the wrong call. But what can you say?
One of the things, and I'm wondering if you have that experience too. One of the nice things about having stopped drinking is that you are able to really to take things in and appreciate them in a way you wouldn't necessarily when you were under the influence of something. And obviously, like when you're younger and you have success, everything it's easy to take things for granted. But at this point in your life, it strikes me that you're not really taking anything for granted.
No. I'm just, I'm not one of those people who likes to go around saying how grateful they are, but I mean, but I am at the same time. I mean, like I'm aware I'm in a very fortunate and lucky position to be able to be doing something that I love so much with people that also love it as much as I do. And I'm not just talking about the other Pogues here, but I'm talking about the other people that we're working with. I forget now if I mentioned this earlier, but people who are like been fans of the band since they were little kids, for whom the band are enormously important because they've had we've had a sort of a clear impact on how they've gone on in their own sort of in their own musical careers. Even if they may not, say a band like Lankum clearly don't sound like the Pogues at all, but if you talk to them, if you talk to Dara or in particular, and they will say, "Oh no, I can hold the Pogues are crucial." You listen to, say, the Merry Wallopers, and the Merry Wallopers do sound like the Pogues, except they can play. Oh God, they play so fast. Oh, Jesus, guys, have a heart. They're brilliant. Yeah.
When you first got, I guess I'll use the word reanimated this most recent time.
Reanimated, yeah.
Yeah, the Rum Sodomy is coming up too, and you sort of see this trajectory. I mean, are you at a point now where you just kind of just keep moving forward with this thing?
I think so. As long as people keep wanting to do it, and people want to sort of turn up and see what's going on, then yeah, there doesn't seem any reason. I mean, we might as well do it whilst we still can. Particularly myself, Jem and James. We are not getting any younger. I mean, I suppose no one actually is. It would be kind of weird if they were, but we're kind of like reaching the further end. So obviously, there'll come a time when we're not actually physically capable of doing it. But let's worry about that. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Jesse James, we understand, has killed a many men. He robbed a Union train